Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you to Matt and Paula for being our guests here and kind of just sharing the journey that they've taken with our platform. I'm Des with Humanly. I kind of have sit in a bunch of different chairs, wear a bunch of different hats. Today, I'm in the marketing and presenter hat, and so we're going to just kind of cover where Matt and his team kind of started with us and the reasons why they even looked into a platform. It could be something you may or may not expect, where we typically hear. We'll go over what their kind of process was prior and why they even wanted to look at improving. We'll look at kind of the results and where they are now, and we'll share multiple stories kind of in between all of those points, so we can kind of share where things are. So, Matt, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then we can kind of go from there.
Sure. Matt Spear, Director of Talent Acquisition for the Triad region at Novant Health. I am also responsible for corporate recruiting for the enterprise. So what that means in the healthcare system, it means all the other positions within shared services that are not acute care or nursing support.
Perfect. And then we also have Paula. You want to introduce yourself, Paula?
Hi, I'm Paula Cobb. I'm a senior recruiter at Novant Health in talent acquisition, and I cover the Triad region reporting into Matt.
Perfect. So like I said, we'll cover, why they looking at technology for screening, the before, the after, some results. Also, we'll talk a little bit about, we hear a lot from people, hey, this may not work for us, or that works for you, but I don't know about me. So we'll kind of talk about the different landscape where people tend to use the platform, and then we can jump into a Q&A and answer any of your questions. When we first met, it was probably going on 2.5 years ago at this point, where you just had an idea of maybe we can make this process better. So your process wasn't necessarily broken. There wasn't some 5 alarm fire you were putting out, but if you could just give us some context on what was happening and what kind of drove you to look for a new solution.
August 2024 is when it all started, Does, if you can believe it, the relationship's been that long. No, to your point, look, I think every organization wants to try to get to candidates faster or find utility in a world that puts restrictions on the different systems that we utilize. But there was nothing that was particularly broken in terms of, hey, we've got all this sort of backlog. We want to try to get to it. Now, I think we all could try to get to candidates more quickly saying that. But what we wanted to do, and we're led by a very kind of progressive thought leader, is let's start to explore what options are out there. What can we do to try to get ahead of this, knowing that we're a growth organization. We know where we want to be in the next several years. What kind of tools are out there for us to get to candidates more quickly? Des, I know you had worked with my leader in a prior life, and you guys had some great success in a healthcare system. We reached out and kind of began a mini RFP process at that time and started to demo the tool and saw that this is something that is exactly kind of what we're looking for at this point. So
Yeah, but before we go to the next slide, one thing I wanted to ask a little bit deeper on is, as you were saying, like, hey, we want to be progressive and forward thinking, what were some of the things that you kind of had on your checklist where, we're fortunate that we become partners, but what were the things you were looking at before you ever came into a first discovery or demo with it?
yeah, I mean, candidate experience, focusing on candidates more quickly. How do we do that? Because we want to make sure that we're creating a very strong candidate experience. We want people to feel engaged. We want them to feel engaged with our value proposition. We wanted to look at technology solutions because I know that that's something that is very popular, especially when you look top down. What are we doing from a technology space? What are we doing from an AI space? Do we have technologies that are out there? How are we leveraging them now? And so, again, I think there were a number of different features that made this relationship appealing. I think we all know that sometimes bottlenecks happen when we have qualified someone. Essentially, we say, this person looks great. Des Prentice looks great. Would love to reach out to him. I've got a couple contact. Here I can send an e-notification to the system, or I can email and call, right? And then we play the waiting game, because then we're sort of at the mercy of the availability of the candidate, okay? So you typically see bottlenecks, I think that's the first one, the first hurdle you have to clear to get people to engage with you. And it's a critical one, because once you can create that engagement and get that response, you feel like you obviously can keep that person engaged throughout the duration of the rest of the relationship, getting them in an interview slate, and then, potentially if they move to offer, kind of moving forward, filling the positions. But we wanted to try to take samples within each of the regions that we have here at Novant Health. And at the time, it was 3 different regions. And we took nursing support roles that we felt like would be good fits to sort of pilot this and launched it at a very small scale. Hey, nothing changes in your workflow. This is just a tool we're using to augment phone screen support for the time being. We started to see this scale up quickly, and then we started to see the metric results. And then it just started to grow from there.
Yeah, for sure. One quick thing I wanted to add that I realized we didn't say at the beginning, what the platform does is it sits at the top of your recruitment funnel. So every time your recruiters would normally be on a live phone screen, we're using a technology to augment that phone screen so you can evaluate and screen much more candidates at scale and at speed. That leads me into part 3 on this slide. One thing we always hear is like, yeah, but we don't want to take the human element out of it, or we want to make sure that like some technology isn't making decisions on our behalf. We still want to be able, and our recruiters can control that. So one thing, Matt, if you could add, or Paula, add more light on is, do you feel like the platform still gives your recruiters the ability to use the judgment that you've taught them and be able to make the right decisions, and they still have control over what's being asked, the answers that's being given to them, and it gives them the ability to still make those proper decisions?
I would say better. I mean, I think it empowers them more so because it, first of all, creates consistency with when you're building a survey by job, you're getting consistent responses. You hope that's always the case, just for compliance purposes, that recruiters that are using like a phone screen template, everybody's using the same template, every candidate's being evaluated the same way, which is how it should be. And so it's not just that piece, it's also the summary that's provided and the scoring mechanism that's provided. I think it even can remove any sort of even unconscious bias that may reside within the recruiter as they're evaluating sort of a litany of different people that have completed a qualified screen. So I would say it better enables them to more quickly evaluate, more consistently evaluate, just based on the consistent benchmarks of how they essentially want to prioritize submittal slate to the hiring leader.
Towards the end, I'll actually show you what a completed interview looks like. So that way you can get a grasp of like how it helps your team make their decisions. Cause we say the platform doesn't make decisions for your team. It just helps them make the decisions that you want them to make or that they were going to make anyway, just at speed and at scale. So towards the end, I'll show you what a completed interview looks like. And I'm sure we'll have a bunch of questions that go back and forth on that. The next thing I wanted to talk about, which I think kind of surprised all of us, was who this interview was for, right? Like what type of demographic uses it? Will our RNs use it? Will our CNAs use it? And so can you talk about kind of what you've discovered as we've grown? So we started with
Yeah.
like a 500 a month pilot where we're just doing
Yeah.
interviews. And as of today, their team is doing around 1,000, a little bit more than 1,000 interviews a month through the platform. So that goes to the different, variety of roles you can use it for. So will you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and we're seeing consistent numbers regardless of job level in terms of response times, level of engagement, and number or percent of responses. But no, we scaled up essentially in nursing support areas initially. So think medical assistants, think patient service coordinators. We started to kind of ideate where can this go? What can we do with this? Protective services was an area that we ended up going as well. And actually we did that. We piloted protected services. And for those of you who don't know, that essentially means hospital police officers. We started to expand into other areas as we started to kind of grow, and we had some acquisition activity and we had some scale up stuff. And so it made sense to bring on partners in the probably late November, December timeframe. We really started to scale in South Carolina. We brought in some groups to help kind of staff some of the facilities that we had. And then we said, okay, we are seeing really consistent results with job disciplines across the board. We never thought to apply it to nursing RN roles because maybe there were some concerns around, they still want that live interaction. They deal with technology all day long. They deal with AI related technology. It'd be nice and refreshing. What we found was we ran it in our RN residency program and then started to pilot in our individual regions and started to see some really strong results at the RN level too. And so from medical assistants up to RNs, up to different facility type support, facility type operations related roles. I feel like we really have quite a swath represented right now with, I think, Paula, 30 job codes, 135 jobs, 37 users right now.
And to add on, because I know Matt works in healthcare, but in terms of our customer base, we see it in We use it with retail staff, mechanical staff, HVAC techs, so all the way up to like software engineers. So is a place where if you feel like your team is undermanned in any way, or you have way too many candidates and who do I start? Where do I start? It's a great platform to use to give you that landing spot to be able to pick and choose where you want to spend your time. Now, we kind of talked earlier about the 7 to 14 days, typically 7 to 10 days to get a candidate on the phone in that initial interview. With the Novant team, they're getting their interviews completed and back to them in 34 hours. This number is even inflated than what we typically see for them, because the way the system measures is like if they invite a bunch of people, if you send these invites out today, you're going to start seeing completed interviews come back tomorrow without anybody having to dial a phone or wait and play phone tag. So to Paula and Matt, when you see a quick turnaround like this, what does that mean to you and your org in terms of reaching candidates and getting them, butts in seats?
Quicker engagement, happy stakeholders and hiring leaders. There's cost savings associated with quicker turnaround time. So I would say those three elements are the first three things that come to mind. Paula, anything you'd add to that?
The other big thing that the system really does is help save teams time. So this number is over the past 30 days. His team has saved 427 hours of not being on the phone by using the platform to do interviews. And like you said, it's not like a team of 50 or something like that. It's a team around 30 doing 1,000 interviews in a month. And so that's something that a lot of teams realize kind of as an after fact, where my recruiters on my team have more time to follow up with candidates that are deeper in the pipeline or connect with hiring managers to make sure they're getting the right fit.
The time savings is absolutely remarkable. I think any of us that understand talent acquisition on this call understand that if you're not spending time trying to hunt down the person that's available, you can actually spend time going and actually sourcing or hunting down prospects that are passive. There are things that you could do in terms of relationship building with stakeholders. The list goes on, but I think about organizing your desk, getting through and responding to other stuff that's priority with hiring leaders. I think focusing on other areas of recruitment and recruitment delivery, as opposed to trying to, spend time to get candidates on the phone, which shouldn't be the lion's share of where you spend your time, but we see it consistently in some of the data and some of the metrics that you see industry wide. Getting a hold of people is time consuming. And so I think there's just enough of different areas where you see time savings and opportunity for recruiters to go back and focus on delivery, focus on sourcing, focus on the other things that we need to do to make ourselves effective. Do you want to share satisfaction survey results too from people that actually go through it and experience?
Great call out. Yeah, we're happy to say out of like the hundreds of thousands of candidates that we interview across the platform, we have a 98 candidate satisfaction. And we found this mostly for three reasons. One, the speed. So like we said, typically takes 7 to 10 days to get an interview. On average, these are turned around in like 19 hours. So candidates really like that. I can apply and put my best foot forward down quickly with an employer. So that's the first reason. The second is convenient. 60% of all of these interviews are done outside normal business hours. So it really widens the recruitment time that your team has without having to hire, a third shift recruitment team, or you have recruiters doing interviews, on their breakfast table, at their dinner table. This gives them to do it. And then the third we learn from candidates is they feel comfortable because interviewing is a lot of pressure and they feel like they can put their best foot forward and be calm when completing the interview. So yeah, we're super happy to say that like candidates use it and candidates love it because it's simple, it's easy. They don't need to download any apps, create any usernames or passwords. It's just simply an SMS or an email. They click a link, they go into the interview and complete it. So they really like the ease and convenience of that. Couple of things to take away and wrap up. As Matt mentioned, and he's become one of our best partners, is you don't need a crisis to improve a process, right? You could just think, hey, is there a way to be ahead of the curve? And can we attack on this moment and seize it and be better?